Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host, Jon Hubbard, shareholder and consultant here at Boomer Consulting. And with me today is Jim Boomer. Hi, Jim. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hello, John. Thanks for having me.
Jim is our fearless CEO. He leads our company and has for the last 5 or 6 years, and he specializes in leadership and technology, among a lot of other areas also. But Jim, as your role as the CEO, you've had to change your thinking over the last 18 months or so of how you best lead and support our team to really help us adapt to the pandemic and just the changing work world, both personally and professionally. And now you help firms navigate this as well. So this topic, I think you're really going to be able to speak into a lot, and that is, how should firms best support their team in 2021? So you're speaking to a firm leader, Jim. Why should firm leaders really think differently about how they support their team this year?
Yeah, well, you're right. It's very important. It's always been very important, but it's become even more so in the last year plus, which we can often get caught up in the day-to-day work that makes our business successful. And we lose sight of the fact that what really makes us successful is our team. And that team's made up of individuals who have unique and a variety of needs, emotionally, mentally, even physically. And if we find that we haven't been as tuned in as we should on an individual basis with our team as leaders, it became very clear that we needed to do that. So, in normal times it was important, but especially so when you're in a pandemic or crisis mode. You need to know what's impacting your team, so that you can provide either the coaching, the tools, the resources that they need to be the most successful that they can be. Because when you make them successful, you're successful and your firm is successful.
Right. Nope, that's excellent. So as you talk with firms, there's a lot of different areas kind of made up in this supporting your team this year. And some of the areas, frankly, are areas that maybe as a profession we haven't historically been tuned into or paid enough attention to. So as you're out kind of coaching firms in this area, what are some solutions or advice you're recommending to them?
So there's a lot of things that I could go through here to better support your team, but I'll give you 5 ideas to better connect with them and to boost engagement. And the first one is, I talked about tuning in. You really do need to tune in and recognize when you have poor engagement. Often poor engagement will manifest it'll show itself in the form of poor performance. And then we want to get out our stick and reprimand and figure out how do we fix it through a performance plan or something. We got to go deeper, and it's especially in these times, we really have to have conversations with people and really understand what's the underlying cause, especially if they've been a strong performer in the past, because this has not been an easy time for most people to go through, for everyone to have to adjust, being holed up and not seeing people that they want to see on a regular basis. So we need to recognize that poor engagement and then figure out how we can best help people to fix whatever that underlying cause is, or at least make it better. Second is, I think we need to provide extra support. We need to be able to truly tune in. We need to have more intentional and regular one-on-one conversations with our team. Some work related, some not, just to build the relationship and the rapport and make, especially when we're working more remotely, and we'll continue to do that, I'm sure. We need to make sure we're focused on that relationship, and that will have huge impacts on how we accomplish our goals and collaborate together. When you are providing extra support, make sure people are aware of the benefits that your firm provides them, whether that's a wellness program, an employee assistance program, the outside of what you can provide as a leader or manager, and probably should provide. If they're struggling from a mental state perspective, if you don't have those resources available to your employees, it's certainly something that you should look at, because leading firms do have those available. And share resources outside of your organization to help people through whatever their challenges are. Third would be communicate transparently. And I think a lot of leaders did this pretty well at the beginning of the pandemic. They were out front, talking to their team, trying, doing their best to project a optimistic mindset, and lead through that. But many firms have fallen off from that, and pre-pandemic, and I imagine post-pandemic, may go back to much more closed approach. And I don't think that's the way to motivate your team and get them engaged and get them truly all rowing in the same direction towards your vision and strategy. And so you have to be transparent. Otherwise, people fill in the gaps for the information that they don't know. They lose trust when they don't think you're being open and honest. Or if they think that you're just sugarcoating everything, but you don't truly believe and aren't genuine about what you're saying. So communication is huge. Continue investing in your team through professional development. I mean, I think it's easy to, when we have a pandemic or any other kind of crisis mode, we go in our shell and we're like, how can we cut costs? And we need to be conservative. And one of the areas that often gets cut back is the training and development of our team. That's the last thing you need to be developing in or cutting back in, because I mean, they are as I said before, they are the reason for the success that our firms recognize. So we need to continue to invest in our people. And then the last thing I'll say is lead by example. So, if you're out front talking to your team about how they need to have the balance in their lives between their professional and their personal lives, you need to showcase that too. If you tell them they shouldn't be working 20 hours a day, I'm being extreme, but they shouldn't be on at all hours of the night. They need to set boundaries and take breaks. Then we as leaders need to also lead with that kind of behavior. So if you're telling your team to not be working till midnight, don't fire off all your emails at midnight. I'm not telling you not to do your work then, but there's easy fixes to make those emails that you sent come out at 8 a.m. So really setting the example. If we're talking about wellness programs or taking care of yourself physically, look in the mirror. Are you doing that as well? How motivating are you to your team if you're up on the soapbox talking about how important it is to take care of yourself and you're not doing it yourself? So really make sure that you're setting a positive example for your team in all areas as we are all working through this together.
Those 5 pieces of advice are great, Jim. The last one leads me to a question, because I think one thing we've seen happen is leaders in firms are putting a lot of effort into supporting their team in new and different ways this year. But sometimes the leaders in firms feel like there's no one supporting them, training them or kind of helping them figure out how to do this. How are you working with firms on that, or how do you see firms approaching that? Are there kind of new trainings that are being put in place for leaders in firms to be able to do this? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, I often hear the phrase "it's lonely at the top," and so if you take a managing partner, if you call that person a CEO, that feeling is real, and it happens a lot of I don't have anybody to talk to. So, we've created a managing partner circle where peers can get together and learn from each other. But a number of our other circles provide other leaders within the firm the same ability. So really tapping into your peer network is one way. The other is outside guidance. I mean, we provide that third party perspective, and based on the work that we do with a number of firms, are able to help a lot of leaders work through whatever challenges they have and be that outside perspective that they need, and that outlet to give them guidance and advice. Ultimately, as a leader, we all have to make the call and make the decision, but it's always nice to have an outside coach or resource that you can go to bounce ideas off of and learn from, and that will probably highlight things that are in your blind spot that you hadn't even thought about.
Agreed. So, Jim, for the firms that are either doing this well, or at least portions of this well, what type of results are they experiencing? Have they been hearing feedback maybe from their staff? Are they, experiencing other sorts of positive results coming out of this? What are you seeing in that area?
Yeah, most definitely. And this isn't just a pandemic time thing that needs to be done as a leader. As I said before, we need to be doing this before and after. But if you really tune in, I've used that term multiple times, you end up with a more engaged team, engaged in the work that they may have in their job description or are responsible for, but also more engaged in the overall success of the firm and the direction that you're headed. And that leads to a lot less friction among the team. When you get all your team members playing their role and not only invested in their own success, but invested in all their team members' success and invested in the organization's success, it's exponential in terms of what you can accomplish and the success that you can recognize. When you just have people siloed, this is what I want you to do and take care of this, and stay in your lane, you may improve, but it's going to be incremental. So just having that more engaged team, I think it leads to a stronger culture in your organization. And then bottom line, better results happen because you are building trust, you're building relationships as a leader in your organization, and all that leads to better results, more profitable firm, more achievement of the goals and the vision that you've set out.
Nope, that's great. So, Jim, I know as you work with firms, that want to be leaders in the profession, and one of the kind of important things you do as part of that process is you pay attention to what's going on outside the profession as it pertains to whatever the topic is you are helping firms through. So, as it pertains to this topic, kind of new ways of supporting our teams, what are you seeing happening outside the profession that you think would be beneficial for people within the accounting profession to know?
Well, this is any team topic. This isn't accounting firm specific. So I really think you could go to any vertical or industry and look for the leaders that are, that end up as strongest workplace culture or best places to work. not just the best accounting firms to work for, but what are the best organizations to work for, and really dive into what their leaders are doing to create that engaged team and create strong results for their organization, and learn from them. And so, research is a great way, but reading is huge. I mean, the books that we as a team share with each other have been huge in helping us to bring that outside perspective outside of the profession. Some of the conferences that we attend and the groups that we're a part of are not just accounting firm specific. And that has been tremendously valuable to get new ideas, new thinking, and then think about how that applies to the accounting firm space.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a human topic, not industry topic. And so your advice there is very well stated. All right, Jim, as we wrap up here on this episode, let's say our listeners are sitting there thinking, hey, this is great. I need to do a better job of this. I wonder what Jim's advice is on next steps I should take. What are your thoughts there?
Well, my bottom line advice on next steps, pretty simple. If you haven't been doing the things that we're talking about, start today. Now, if you have, and you reflect and you say, well, it's kind of been just during the pandemic that I started doing this, but I've seen it have an impact and it's having some positive things. My advice is don't stop. Make it part of your culture and make it an ongoing thing. I think the other thing that you can do, which we mentioned earlier in our conversation, John, is join a group of your peers. And that will become a tremendous resource in terms of trusted relationships that you can tap into and get value from, whether that's one of the circles that we offer or another group that will get you in a group of your peers that can provide you that experience, expertise, knowledge of what worked, but probably more importantly, what didn't work, and new ideas. It'll really fast track your progress in this area. And I think the other thing, as we mentioned before, look outside the profession. Don't just limit yourself to what other accounting firms are doing, whether that's through reading or, we've made LinkedIn Learning available to all of our team, and there's a huge trove of information there. So there's a lot of resources that you can look outside of accounting firm specific as well.
That's great, Jim. And, as leaders, it's important to know you're not at it alone. Get plugged into a group, whether it's one of ours, whether it is, outside the profession, but getting plugged into a group so you don't have to recreate the wheel and feel that you are at it all alone. So, Jim, that concludes at least our time for this episode. As always, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for being on this episode of the podcast.
Well, again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For our listeners, if you liked what you heard today, please subscribe. We release new episodes every Tuesday morning. Thanks so much.